I never thought I'd do this, but this could go terribly, terribly wrong. So this is kind of my journey so far on why I chose to be a Christian. And I can't lie, I never thought I'd do like a testimony, like life story kind of video, because I don't know, I feel like there's not much to say. Because when you go online and you listen to so many testimonies, like I listen to quite a few, and like everyone has these crazy stories that you can make a movie out of, and I kind of don't really have that. So let's just get into it. So I grew up in a Christian household, mum, dad, older brother, and quite a bit later, younger brother. Yeah, I feel like as a child you kind of just accept things off of faith, you know what I mean? Like, so you see your parents living their life, this is what they believe. Ah, cool, yeah, I'll go along with it. But there's a couple of spiritual encounters you could say that I did have, which kind of solidified that there must be a God, or at least a higher being. So for people who did grow up in like Christian households, it obviously would have been common to go to like the odd Christian conference, Christian camp, and like in worship especially, like you kind of feel something, right? But it's a bit more intense than that. Like the earliest memory I have of something like that is, I couldn't have been any older, 6, 7 maybe, around that age. And I remember like I was getting really overwhelmed with the fact that, is there a God or not? So yeah, I was getting a bit wound up, a bit like, oh, is there actually a God? How do we know there's a God? I remember talking to my mum. I was like, how do we know there's a God? And like, she obviously explained like Jesus died for us and all these kind of things. Like, and I remember like, I was still a bit like, how though? Like, how do you know? Like, how do you know? And I remember before I went to bed, she said to me, the older I get, the like more I'm like, that is like real faith from my mum. Because she said, just pray to God that he'll reveal himself to you and like be quite specific about it. So I remember being a kid and I was just like, God, I just pray that if you are real, that you let me control my dream. And I remember that night, that exact thing happened. I remember I could control my dream. I knew exactly that I was in a dream and I knew exactly what I was doing. And I kind of wasted the dream, not gonna lie. I was really into SpongeBob at the time. So I was like, oh God, I pray, like, turn me into SpongeBob, and then I was SpongeBob. And then I was like, turn me into a skyscraper, and then I was a skyscraper. And then like, I just woke up. And I remember waking up thinking, I wasted that. But that really did solidify my faith quite a lot. So kind of from that point onwards, I was always, I don't know if it's strong, I always had a good relationship with God. Like I knew you could speak to God. I was really into like worship music. So I'd always listen to worship music, like even until throughout high school, like on the bus or whatever, throughout college, like I'd always listen to worship music because I was just quite liked it. And I know I always felt like I was connecting to God. Like I didn't read my Bible, I didn't like practice much of Christianity, or like I went to church to see friends and I was like about it, but I would listen to worship music and like talk to God a lot. And that was kind of like as far as it got. So around a similar kind of age, probably a bit older, probably like 10, 11, like year 6 maybe, I had another spiritual encounter, which also added to the solidifying of there must be something or some things bigger than us. As I got older, I could search it up, and a lot of people describe it as like sleep paralysis. At mum and dad's old house, I had like a spare bedroom or like a playroom like downstairs, and I remember me, my dad, my older brother would like sleep in there quite a lot, you know, as you do, like stay up, play a bit of Xbox, like think you're doing something crazy, and then like just sleep downstairs, because that's ace when you're a kid. And then I remember waking up, so I remember I was like, there was my dad there, me there, and my older brother there, so I was asleep in between them both. I remember waking up in the middle of the night, like I was awake, okay, and I couldn't move, so I'm stuck kind of like this, so I could just move my head and my eyes, but couldn't move my body, and I was a bit like, this is weird. And real strangely, like I didn't feel any fear in this, which isn't like boasting like, oh, I wasn't scared, oh, look at me. It was like the real, I really think it was like when people say the prayers of your parents over child's like matter, like it really does, like, because I knew God was, I'll explain. So I'm looking around like this, right? I had these big chest of drawers, like, as a kid, this chest of drawers was huge, right? Massive, like felt like it went up to the ceiling. And I remember looking up at this chest of drawers, and there was like a demon sat on the top of these chest of drawers, just like looking at me and like smiling as if like happy that I couldn't move. I remember trying to shout, Dad, Because obviously I looked to my left, looked to my right, and my dad and my brother weren't there. So I was like, Dad, trying to shout and nothing came out. So it was like, like panting. After trying to do that, which felt like a couple seconds, like 30 seconds. I remember like one time like it came out and the door was next to the chest drawers. So the chest drawers like in front of me and the door's like to the right. And this massive like bright light like came through the door. And then like just waking up in the same position, it was morning. And again, like I didn't think much of it. I really feel like that was some sort of angel or Jesus coming after me saying Dad, which therefore even more solidified my faith of like I've had these two encounters which are unexplainable, and it's hard to articulate to people because I believe it's real. And unless you have had a similar thing or also believe in that kind of thing, you'd probably just think, oh, it's a dream or it's your mind playing tricks on you. But for me, they were really instrumental in keeping my faith growing up. So from that, I could never like deny my faith or deny that there was a God. So growing up wasn't like really difficult. Good mum and dad. Like growing up wasn't hard. Do you know what I mean? But I always wrestled with like, not is God real, but like why I look around is there kind of so much suffering to good people, which is like such like a common question. Is like, why do bad things happen to good people kind of thing? And why do like good things happen to bad people? Which a lot of people just have that question. That was like my main wrestle. And then also like I always really wanted to like evangelize to people and talk to people about God. But I never wanted to feel prejudged by people. So I never cared in a sense if people liked me or not. But I wanted to know. I wanted people to know who I was before making that decision. And I feel like obviously when you're younger, like a lot of stuff is prejudged, which really like frustrated me as a kid, which made me hold back quite a lot to quite a lot of people. So I had to select people like I just would talk to anything about, like some of my best friends, like whether they're Christians or not, I would just talk to them about it because they knew who I was. But it really like reserved me from like talking to like a bigger audience of people or being like so open about my faith. Like I would never deny that I believed in God, but I wouldn't be open about it. Like I wouldn't bring it up and I wouldn't pursue that conversation. And I'd say around 19, 20 was when I really started like, for me it was a bit more of like a time thing. Like if I'm putting so much time into talking to this God and listening to worship and like, so it was just more like involving God in my decisions. Like I really wanted an apprenticeship around that time. So praying about an apprenticeship, and I got an apprenticeship. Praying like about a girlfriend, and then I got a girlfriend who is now my wife, which is kind of really cliche in a sense that, oh yeah, you kept your faith because of a girlfriend, which at times I would say yes, that is probably true in the sense that having people I wanted to go see at church did keep me in church, but didn't keep my faith. And I feel like obviously, so I've got to 19, 20, 23 now, so 20, probably like 19, 20. I really felt like my first like real ultimatum with God, in the sense that are you in or you out? Like you can't live both, to the extent that I was, as in like I wasn't actually practicing anything. I just believed there was a God and like knew I could talk to him, and like I knew he was a relational God. So I was like, all right, cool, I'll practice it a bit more, prayed a bit more, kind of read my Bible, tried not much, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm not a phenomenal reader. So my faith did grow. Like I got involved in church a lot more, like serving in areas, like chose to practice my faith, which was great, all these kind of things. And then I feel like around that time is when I got like a second like ultimatum with God. Like in the Bible it describes like lukewarm as like the worst, like God spits you out. And that's like where I was at. And not lukewarm in the sense that I was doing crazy stuff, but in the sense that I wasn't living for God, if you know what I mean. God was like second or third priority in my life. I just knew that wasn't fruitful. And I felt God saying, well, if you're not going to prioritize me now, like, I don't know what would happen. So I chose to really press into God, take my faith seriously, like prayed for good Christian friends, which God has been so faithful in giving. And then now ultimately being to here to where I am, which is just I just want as many people as possible to know that they have the choice of Jesus, to know that they have a choice of there's a God who loves them, and there's a God who's got a plan and a purpose for their life, and physically came down and died for the bad things we do. So we get the choice to choose to be in relationship with him and go to heaven and kind of live a prosperous life, in the sense that life with God is so much better than life without God. Like the untangible things, the peace, the joy, the relationships you grow. The world can't give you that. The world might give you a nice car, might give you a nice house, might give you all these materialistic things, but the real deep-rooted things like you can't get from the world. And I was trying to do both. So then I went through a period of really deconstructing my faith. So not really deconstructing, but more like, all right, why do I believe what I believe? Is there a creator? Yes, I believe you can't get life from non-life. Something must create everything. And then from that, there must be a God. Okay, let's take the evidence of when I was a child, spiritual encounters, the people around me who've walked the walk, parents, friends, older people in church. Okay, cool. Like, their lives are evidence of faith, that there's something bigger than us, and it's helped them. Okay. Finally, it's like, so if I believe that, let's look at the textual evidence, look in the Bible, look at the Gospels, look at all these people who died crazy deaths. These disciples died crazy deaths, and it couldn't have been for a lie. And if Jesus was a real person, which we have evidence that he is, these people couldn't have died for a lie. Like, you wouldn't die such gruesome deaths that they did for a lie. Like, you just wouldn't. Taking into all that evidence, if there's a God, there must be a loving God. If there's a loving God, and this evidence shows that Jesus Christ was real, and Jesus came and died for our sins and didn't have to do that. He's God. He doesn't have to save us, and came down to save us. That looks like a loving God from nothing, because it's nothing we can do to get in that love, compared to other religions where a lot of it's work-based, or their messiahs or people they look at weren't who they said they were. And that's kind of how I came to the conclusion and kind of came to where I am now. And honestly, best decision I've ever made. And honestly, at times kind of the hardest decision I've ever made, because it points out that there's so much work everyone has to do, in the sense that God comes in to live in us internally and as a byproduct, because we love God and want to have that relationship with God and want to do life God's way. It's a roller coaster, and it's the best roller coaster that you would ever go on if you choose to do that. And there's consequences either way. Like, you can choose to live a life separate from God, or choose to live a life with God. And people are fine with that choice. But are you fine with the consequences of that choice? And that's where I might leave it. Because I don't want anyone to live the consequence through of choosing a life separated from God. I want everyone to choose life with God. Because the consequences of choosing life with God, they're great. But yeah, this may have gone to plan, may have not gone to plan, probably didn't go to plan. And I just encourage people to share their story and share their testimony, because even if you don't think you've got one, you probably do.